Welcome back to AU Family Channel, and thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to have you as one of our loyal listeners. If our stories have ever touched your heart, we are so grateful that you keep coming back to spend this time with us. So find somewhere comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and let us begin today's story, together. There was a boy in my class named Elias who could not hear a single sound in the world, and for a long time I thought that made him less than the rest of us. I was 14 and stupid in the particular way that 14-year-olds are stupid, sure that the world was simple and that people who were different were somehow behind. Then, over the course of one strange and quiet year, Elias taught me more about how to truly listen than anyone who could hear ever had. This is the story of the boy who lived in silence, and how he pulled me out of a noise I did not even know was drowning me. Elias came to our school at the start of 9th grade, and the whole class did not know what to do with him. He was deaf, profoundly, from birth, and he came with a sign language interpreter who sat quietly at the side of the room and turned our teacher's words into moving hands. We were not cruel to him exactly. We were worse than cruel. We were indifferent. We treated him like a piece of furniture that had been placed in the room, something to move around, not someone to know. I am ashamed of that now. But at the time it did not even occur to me that behind those still eyes was a person watching all of us very, very closely. I was not a bad kid, or so I told myself. I did not mock him the way a couple of the crueler boys did, making exaggerated gestures behind his back, laughing at sounds he could not hear them make. But I did nothing to stop them either. I looked away. I told myself it was not my business, that someone else would handle it, that Elias probably did not even notice. That last part was the biggest lie of all, because I would learn that Elias noticed everything. Deafness had not dulled him. It had sharpened him into someone who read the whole room while the rest of us were too busy talking to see anything at all. My life outside of school was loud. That is the only way I can describe it now. My parents were splitting up that year, slowly and bitterly, and our house was full of a noise that never stopped, raised voices through walls, doors, the television turned up to cover the arguing, the phone always ringing. I lived inside a constant roar, and I had learned to roar back, to fill every silence with my own noise so I would not have to hear what was underneath it. I talked constantly. I joked constantly. I was, my teachers said, a boy who could not sit still or be quiet. I did not know yet that all my noise was a way of not listening to my own life. The thing that changed everything was small, the way the things that change everything usually are. Our teacher paired us up for a semester-long science project, drawing names from a bowl, and she drew mine right next to Elias. I remember the flush of dismay I felt, the unkind, automatic thought, how am I supposed to work with him? I actually asked the teacher, quietly, if I could switch. She looked at me for a long moment, and she said no, and she said it in a way that made me feel about 2 inches tall. So I was stuck. Me, the boy who never stopped talking, partnered for 4 months with a boy who could not hear a word I said. The first day we worked together was excruciating, mostly because of me. I did not know how to be with someone I could not simply talk at. The interpreter was only available during class hours, so when we met in the library after school it was just the two of us, and I had no idea what to do. I tried talking anyway, loudly, slowly, in that ridiculous way people talk to someone who cannot hear, as if volume could cross that gap. Elias watched my mouth with a patience that I did not deserve. Then he slid a notebook across the table, and written on it in neat handwriting were the words, "You can just write. I am not going anywhere." And something in me went quiet for the first time in months. So we wrote. That first afternoon we filled pages, passing the notebook back and forth, and a strange thing happened. Because I had to write instead of talk, I said less, and I meant more. You cannot ramble in handwriting the way you can with your voice. Every sentence cost something. And in that slowness, that carefulness, I found myself actually thinking about what I wanted to say before I said it, maybe for the first time in my life. Elias wrote quickly and cleanly, and he was, I discovered within an hour, funny. Dryly, sharply funny, in a way none of us had ever known because we had never once given him the chance to be anything to us at all. Over the next few weeks, the notebook filled up, and then a second one. We were supposed to be studying plant biology, and we did, but in the margins and between the diagrams a whole friendship was quietly growing. Elias asked me questions no one else ever asked, because he had been watching me all along. He wrote, "One day, you talk to everyone but you never say anything real, why is that?" I stared at that sentence for a long time. No one who could hear my constant noise had ever heard the emptiness inside it. But Elias, who could not hear a sound, had seen straight through to the center of me in a matter of weeks. I started, slowly, to tell him the truth. About my parents, about the splitting house, about the noise I carried everywhere so I would not have to feel how scared I was. I had not told anyone. My friends knew nothing, because with my friends I was the funny one, the loud one, the one who was fine. But Elias lived in a world without noise, and there was something about writing it down in his quiet library corner that let it out of me. He never offered advice. He never told me it would be okay. He just read every word, and nodded, and once he reached across the table and put his hand flat on my chest, over my hammering heart, and held it there, and I understood that he was listening in a way ears could never manage. He began, that autumn, to teach me his language. It started because I wanted to be able to say something to him without the notebook, and I asked him to show me how to sign my own name. He lit up. I had never seen him light up before, and I realized in that moment how lonely his silence must have been, surrounded all day by people who never once tried to reach him where he lived. He taught me my name, and then his, and then simple words, and his hands moved with a grace that made my clumsy imitations look like a bear trying to knit. But he was patient. Endlessly, gently patient. And I was, for the first time in my life, a genuinely eager student. Learning sign language did something to me I did not expect. It made me slow down. It made me pay attention to faces, to hands, to the whole body, in a way I never had. Elias taught me that his language lived in the eyebrows and the shoulders and the tilt of the head as much as in the fingers, that a sign done with a certain expression meant something entirely different than the same sign done another way. It was, I began to understand, a richer way of speaking than my endless noise, more honest, harder to lie in. You cannot hide behind sign the way you can hide behind a wall of chatter. Everything shows. Everything means something. I was learning to be seen. The crueler boys did not stop, and now that I was Elias's friend, their attention turned partly to me. They called me names, asked why I was hanging out with the deaf kid, made the same mocking gestures at both of us now. For a couple of weeks I felt the old cowardice pulling at me, the urge to laugh along, to distance myself, to protect my own place in the loud crowd. And then one day one of them did something in the hallway, flapped his hands in Elias's face in a grotesque imitation, and I watched Elias's expression not even flicker, because he had decided long ago that their noise was not worth his attention. And I was so ashamed of my own hesitation that something in me finally hardened into a decision. I stepped between them. I did not hit anyone, I was never brave in that way, but I put my body between Elias and the boy, and I signed, clumsily, deliberately, right there in the hallway where everyone could see, the sign for friend. Elias had taught it to me the week before. It is a beautiful sign, two hooked fingers linking together, and then reversing, like two people holding on to each other. I did it wrong, probably, my hands were shaking. But Elias saw it. And he smiled, a real smile, and he signed it back, and the two of us stood there in a loud hallway speaking a silent word to each other that none of the shouting boys could understand or touch. That was the day the friendship became something unbreakable. The boys drifted off, bored, because cruelty needs a reaction to feed on, and we gave them nothing. And Elias and I walked to the library, our library, and I remember feeling taller than I had ever felt, not because I had won a fight but because I had finally, for once in my cowardly loud life, stood still in a hard moment instead of running from it with noise. Elias wrote in the notebook that day, "You did not have to do that." And I wrote back, "Yes, I did." And he looked at me and I understood that he knew exactly what I meant, that it had been as much for me as for him. As I got deeper into his language, Elias started letting me into his world, and it was so much bigger and stranger and more beautiful than I had imagined. He showed me how he experienced music, through vibration, pressing his hand flat against a speaker, feeling the bass move through his bones, dancing to a rhythm he could feel but never hear. He showed me how he could tell who was coming down a hallway by the pattern of their footsteps through the floor. He noticed a flower blooming, a shift in the light, the exact moment a person's mood changed, all the things the rest of us thundered past. His silence was not an absence. It was a different and richer way of being awake in the world. The low point of that year had nothing to do with school. It was the night my parents finally told me they were divorcing, sitting me down in the loud living room and saying the words while the television murmured behind them. And the strangest thing happened. I did not fill the silence. For once in my life, I did not make a joke, did not talk over it, did not roar. I just sat there and let the terrible quiet be terrible. Because Elias had taught me, all those afternoons, that some things are too important to bury under noise, that you have to let yourself hear the hard thing before you can begin to carry it. I sat in my breaking family and I listened. It was the bravest thing I had ever done. The next day I told Elias, in his language, haltingly, my hands stumbling over the signs for the words I could barely say out loud. "My family is breaking." He watched my hands, and then he did something I will never forget. He signed back, slowly, so I could follow, "I know how quiet a broken house is." And I realized that Elias, who had lived his whole life in silence, understood the particular loneliness of my breaking home better than anyone who could hear ever could. He knew about being in a room full of people and feeling completely alone. He had been teaching me, all year, how to survive exactly this. How to be at peace inside a silence instead of terrified of it. We finished the science project, and it was good, actually, better than good, because we had poured a whole strange season of friendship into it. But by then the project was the least of it. I was signing fluently enough to hold real conversations. I was spending most of my free time with Elias, at his house sometimes, where his parents, who were also deaf, welcomed me into a home that was quiet and warm and full of a communication so rich and fast that I could barely keep up. There was more laughter in that silent house than in any loud one I had ever been in. I began to understand that I had been the one who was impaired all along, deaf to everything that mattered, and Elias had been slowly teaching me to hear. There was a moment at Elias's house that undid me. His whole family was signing at dinner, hands flying, faces alive, laughing without a sound, and I sat in the middle of it feeling something I had never felt in my own loud home. Peace. Belonging. A conversation that required you to look at each other, really look, to be fully present, because if you glanced away you missed the words entirely. In my house we talked constantly and connected never. In this silent house, they connected completely. I asked Elias later, in signs, how his home could feel so much fuller than mine when mine had so much more noise. And he signed back, "Noise is not the same as listening." I have never forgotten it. As that year went on, I changed in ways my old friends noticed and did not entirely like. I was quieter. I listened more. I had stopped filling every gap with chatter, and some of them found the new me unsettling, a joke that had stopped telling itself. A couple drifted away. But the friendships that remained got deeper, because for the first time I was actually present in them, actually hearing what people said instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. Elias had given me that. He had taken a boy who used noise as armor and taught him, one silent afternoon at a time, that the bravest and kindest thing you can do is to be quiet enough to truly hear another person. The real turning point, the one I think about most, came near the end of the school year. Our school held a talent show, and a few of us convinced Elias to be part of it, though he was reluctant. What we did was this. A song played, one with a strong, deep rhythm, and Elias signed the words as a kind of visual poem, his whole body the instrument, while I stood beside him and signed along, and a couple of others we had taught. The gym was packed and loud. And then Elias began, and the room went silent, truly silent, hundreds of hearing people falling quiet to watch a deaf boy make a song visible with his hands. You could have heard a pin drop. He had silenced the whole loud world. I glanced at him halfway through, and there were tears on his face, and I understood what this meant to him, this boy who had sat invisible in our classroom for so long, now holding an entire gymnasium spellbound in his own language. When it ended there was a silence, a real held breath, and then the applause came like a wave, and half of them were signing it, the sign for applause that Elias had taught our whole grade, hands raised and twisting in the air, a silent storm of praise. Elias stood in the middle of it, seen at last, and I stood beside him with my hands in the air, and I have never in my life been prouder to be someone's friend. After the talent show, everything was different for Elias at our school. People who had ignored him for a year suddenly wanted to learn a few signs, wanted to say hello, wanted to know him. And Elias, who had every right to be bitter, who could have turned his back on all the people who had treated him like furniture, was gracious instead. He taught anyone who asked. He was patient with all of them the way he had been patient with me. I asked him once, in signs, why he was not angry at them for ignoring him so long. And he signed back, "Being angry is loud, and I prefer to be at peace." It was the most grown-up thing I had ever heard, and no one had said a word. My parents' divorce went through that summer, and it was as hard as those things are. But I moved through it differently than the boy I had been at the start of the year would have. I did not drown it in noise. I let myself feel the grief of my family coming apart, and I let the people who loved me help me carry it, and when it got to be too much I would go to Elias, and we would sit in the quiet and say nothing at all, and that saying nothing together was worth more than 1,000 people telling me it would be okay. Elias had taught me that presence is louder than words. That sometimes the kindest thing you can offer someone is simply to sit in their silence with them and not run. I want to tell you about Elias's parents, because they taught me something too. They had raised a deaf son in a hearing world, fought for him, protected him, and they carried no bitterness about it, only a fierce, quiet pride. His mother told me once, writing in my notebook, that when Elias was born and they learned he was deaf, people had said sorry to them, as if something had been lost. And she wrote, "We never felt that way. He was never broken. The world was just too loud to hear him." I have thought about that sentence for years. He was never broken. The world was just too loud to hear him. How many people are we walking past every day, whole and worthy, simply because we are too loud to listen? By the end of that year, sign language had become a second language I would carry for the rest of my life, but more than that, Elias had rewired something in me. I had come to him aloud, frightened, cowardly boy who used noise to avoid his own life. I left that year quieter, braver, and more awake. I noticed things now. I saw people. I could sit in a silence without needing to fill it, could be with someone in pain without babbling to make myself feel useful. A deaf boy had taught a hearing boy how to listen. It remains, to this day, the single most important thing anyone has ever taught me, and he did it without ever making a sound. We stayed friends through high school and beyond. We went to different colleges, but we wrote long letters that carried on the notebook tradition of our first afternoons, and we visited, and every time I saw him my hands remembered the language even when my mind had gone rusty. He became a teacher himself, eventually, teaching deaf children, giving them the confidence he had once had to build alone. And I became someone who works with people, who listens for a living, and I know exactly where that came from. It came from a library table and a past notebook and a boy who was patient enough to teach a loud fool how to be quiet enough to hear. I think often about how close I came to missing him. If the teacher had let me switch partners that first day, the way I begged her to, I would have gone through my whole life as the loud, frightened boy, drowning my own heart in noise, walking past 100 Eliases without ever once slowing down to see them. That teacher, by saying no, gave me the greatest gift of my life, and she probably never knew it. Sometimes the doors we most want to escape through are the ones we most need to stay behind. Sometimes the person we are sure we have nothing to learn from is carrying the exact lesson our soul has been starving for. I almost switched. Thank God I could not. Some people, when I tell this story, focus on the idea that I helped Elias, that I befriended the outcast, stood up for him, included him. And I always correct them, because it is important. Elias did not need me. Elias was whole, and at peace, and complete, long before I stumbled into his orbit. I was the one who needed him. I was the impaired one, the lonely one, the one drowning. He reached across a library table and pulled me out of a noise that was killing me, and he asked for nothing in return except that I learn to see him. The kindness in this story flows the other way from how it looks. He saved me. I only ever learned to say his name with my hands. There is a sign Elias taught me that I still make sometimes, alone, when I miss him or when the world gets too loud. It is the sign for listen, but he taught me a deeper version, one that means to listen with your whole self, not just your ears. You bring your hand not to your ear but to your heart. Because Elias believed, and taught me to believe, that real listening does not happen in the ears at all. It happens in the attention you pay, the presence you offer, the willingness to be quiet and let another person be fully real in front of you. In a world that never stops shouting, that kind of listening is almost a lost art. He kept it alive. He gave it to me. There is a memory I hold above all the others. It was a summer evening, years after that first school year, and Elias and I were sitting on his porch as the sun went down, not signing, not writing, just sitting. The light was gold and the world was quiet, and I realized that I was completely at peace in a silence that once would have terrified me. I had a whole conversation with my oldest friend that evening without either of us saying a single word, hearing or signed. We just sat, shoulder to shoulder, watching the day end, two people who understood each other so completely that language of any kind had become unnecessary. That, I think, is the deepest friendship there is. To be silent together and never once feel alone. I asked him that evening, finally, in signs, the question I had carried for years. I asked him if he had known, back at that library table, how lost I was, how much I needed a friend. And he smiled, and he signed back, "Of course I knew. You talked so much. Only people who are drowning make that much noise." I laughed until I cried. He had seen me from the very first day, the loud frightened boy using chatter as a life raft, and instead of turning away from me the way I had turned away from him, he had quietly, patiently, thrown me a line. He had chosen to save the boy who had done nothing to deserve saving. That is the kind of person he was. These days, when I catch myself filling a silence out of nervousness, talking too much, performing instead of connecting, I stop, and I put my hand to my heart, and I remember Elias. I remember that the loudest people are often the most frightened, that noise is so often a way of not listening to our own lives, and that the bravest thing a person can do is be quiet enough to truly hear another human being. I have raised my own children on this lesson. I taught them signs before they could talk. And I tell them about the boy who could not hear a sound in the world and yet was the best listener I have ever known. If there is one thing Elias taught me, it is that being different is not the same as being less, and that the people we are quickest to overlook are so often the ones carrying exactly what we need. For a year I thought a deaf boy was behind the rest of us, someone to be tolerated, moved around, ignored. He was so far ahead of us that it took me a whole year just to catch up to where he already lived. We are surrounded, every day, by people we have decided are lesser without ever giving them the chance to be more. Elias taught me to give people that chance. It changed my whole life. It might change yours. I learned that real listening is not about your ears. It is about your attention, your presence, your willingness to be quiet enough to let someone else be fully real. Elias could not hear a single word, and yet he listened to me more truly than anyone with perfect hearing ever had. And I could hear everything, and I had been deaf to the whole world, deaf to my friends, deaf to my family, deaf to my own frightened heart, until a silent boy taught me how to listen. If your life is loud right now, if you are filling every silence out of fear, I hope you find your Elias. And I hope, when you do, you are quiet enough to hear what they have to teach you. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end of this story. It truly means the world that you are here. If Elias and his beautiful silence moved your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe to AU Family Channel, where a brand new story is waiting for you every single week. And remember what a deaf boy taught a loud and frightened one. Noise is not the same as listening, and the bravest thing you can do is be quiet enough to truly hear another person. So today, maybe, put your hand to your heart, and really listen to someone. You never know whose whole world you might finally hear. I will see you in the next one.